Hey guys, tonight we're exploring a story that everyone in history should know. The story is Ancient Rome's most terrifying serial killers. You get comfortable, take a moment, like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Ancient Rome's most terrifying serial killers. When most people think about ancient Rome, they imagine towering temples, fearless gladiators, brilliant military commanders, powerful emperors, and an empire that ruled much of the known world for centuries. It is a civilization remembered for its engineering, its laws, and its unmatched political influence. Marble statues still stand as symbols of Roman greatness, and the ruins of massive arenas continue to inspire millions of visitors every year. But beneath that glorious image existed another Rome. It was a Rome filled with fear. A Rome where people disappeared without explanation. A Rome where poison could be more powerful than a sword. A Rome where a trusted physician, a loyal servant, a respected noble, or even a close family member might secretly be planning someone's death. Unlike modern serial killers, many of Rome's most terrifying murderers rarely hunted strangers in dark alleys. Instead, they often killed people they knew. They murdered for power, revenge, money, political influence, or simply because another death made the next one easier. Ancient Rome had no fingerprints, no forensic laboratories, no DNA testing, no surveillance cameras, no organized homicide departments. If a wealthy Roman suddenly died after dinner, everyone might whisper about poison, but proving it was another matter entirely. A clever killer could escape justice simply because there was almost no reliable scientific evidence. This made ancient Rome one of history's most dangerous places for hidden murder. The Roman world stretched across 3 continents. Millions of people lived under imperial rule. Great cities connected distant provinces through roads that amazed the ancient world. Merchants carried luxury goods across vast distances. Soldiers marched from Britain to Syria. Senators debated laws while slaves served wine inside magnificent villas. Yet behind this enormous empire existed countless opportunities for murder. Large households meant dozens of servants moved through kitchens every day. Banquets offered endless chances to poison food or wine. Political rivalries encouraged secret assassinations. Inheritance laws gave relatives strong financial motives. Medical knowledge was limited, allowing poison to imitate natural illness. Many deaths that appeared ordinary may never have been ordinary at all. Roman historians often described strange illnesses that struck suddenly after feasts. Healthy nobles collapsed overnight. Young heirs died before claiming their fortunes. Generals became violently sick after celebrating victories. Widows inherited enormous estates following unexpected deaths. Were all these deaths natural? Almost certainly not. Some were accidents, some were disease, but but others almost certainly involved murder. The frightening truth is that historians will never know exactly how many killers escaped unnoticed. Many names have vanished forever. Their victims were buried. Witnesses died. Evidence disappeared. Official records were lost. Entire generations passed before anyone questioned what had happened. History usually remembers famous emperors and victorious generals. Far fewer people remember those who perfected the art of killing quietly. In ancient Rome, violence was not unusual. Executions entertained crowds. Gladiators fought to the death. Crucifixions lined major roads. Wars claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. Because violence was everywhere, individual murders sometimes attracted surprisingly little attention. Death had become part of everyday life. This environment allowed certain killers to hide in plain sight. When everyone expected violence, another unexplained death rarely shocked society for long. Yet there is an important difference between ordinary violence and serial murder. A soldier kills during battle. An executioner kills by law. A gladiator kills to survive. A serial killer kills repeatedly outside those accepted roles. The motivation often becomes deeply personal. Some enjoy control. Some crave power. Some seek wealth. Others become addicted to the act itself. Although modern psychology cannot diagnose people who lived 2,000 years ago, surviving historical records reveal disturbing behavioral patterns that resemble what investigators today would recognize as serial killing. Again and again, certain individuals appeared wherever mysterious deaths occurred. Again and again, wealthy victims died under suspicious circumstances. Again and again, poison became the silent weapon of choice. Poison terrified Romans more than almost anything else. A sword announced its arrival. Poison did not. It entered quietly through food, drink, medicine, perfume, cosmetics, or even ordinary household items. Victims often never realized they had been attacked. Families watched helplessly as loved ones developed unbearable pain, fever, vomiting, paralysis, or madness. Doctors offered treatments that rarely worked. Priests prayed. Friends hoped. The victim slowly died. Sometimes within hours. Sometimes over several days. Sometimes after weeks of suffering. And somewhere nearby, the killer calmly waited. No screams, no chase, no bloody battlefield. Only silence. Roman writers described poisoners with particular horror because they violated one of society's most sacred traditions. Sharing food represented trust. Roman banquets symbolized friendship, family, and political alliances. To poison someone's meal was to betray every social expectation. It transformed hospitality into terror. After enough mysterious deaths, people began questioning every cup of wine, every plate of food, every physician's medicine, every servant carrying dinner. Fear spread faster than facts. Rumors became weapons. Accusations destroyed reputations. Sometimes innocent people suffered because terrified Romans desperately needed someone to blame. Yet sometimes those accusations were absolutely correct. One name appears repeatedly whenever historians discuss deadly poison in ancient Rome. A woman whose reputation became so terrifying that even emperors reportedly trusted her skills. a woman whose knowledge of lethal substances allegedly shaped imperial politics. A woman who turned murder into something approaching science. Her name would become synonymous with death. But she was far from alone. Rome produced many frightening killers. Some acted alone. Others worked for powerful patrons. Some murdered within their own families. Others eliminated political enemies. Some vanished into history after a handful of crimes. Others continued killing for years. What makes their stories especially chilling is that many operated openly. Not because everyone knew they were killers, but because their public identities appeared perfectly respectable. They were nobles, doctors, servants, officials, friends, parents, advisors, people welcomed into homes, trusted around children, invited to banquets, consulted during illness. No one imagined that beneath calm expressions existed minds capable of arranging death after death. Ancient Roman society also created unique pressures that encouraged murder. Power determined survival. Political failure could mean execution. Family fortunes depended upon inheritance. Emperors rarely trusted even their closest relatives. Brothers competed against brothers. Children threatened parents. Parents feared ambitious sons. Marriage often resembled political strategy rather than romance. Every alliance carried hidden risks. Every fortune tempted greedy relatives. Every succession crisis created opportunities for killers. This documentary is not about mythical monsters. It is about real human beings. Some are well documented, others remain surrounded by mystery. Whenever historical evidence is uncertain, we will separate established facts from later legends. Ancient historians sometimes exaggerated dramatic events. Political propaganda shaped many surviving accounts. Rumors became accepted history. Our journey will examine these stories carefully, asking not only who may have killed, but also why later generations believed those accusations. Because understanding Roman serial killers means understanding Rome itself. An empire obsessed with power. A society fascinated by violence. A civilization where ambition often outweighed morality. As we travel deeper into this hidden world, we will encounter poison laboratories, imperial conspiracies, family betrayals, mysterious deaths, professional executioners, political assassinations, and individuals whose names inspired fear for centuries. Some victims were emperors. Others were children. Some killers became rich. Others eventually faced horrifying punishments. Many escaped justice completely. Their crimes dissolved into history. Yet echoes remain. Ancient texts, archaeological discoveries, letters, court records, rumors preserved by historians. Together they reveal a darker Rome than most people ever imagine. A Rome where survival sometimes depended less upon courage than upon knowing whom to trust. And perhaps the most frightening lesson of all is this. The deadliest people in ancient Rome rarely looked dangerous. They smiled. They served meals. They prepared medicine. They attended celebrations. They offered friendship. Then when nobody expected it, another life quietly came to an end. among all the terrifying figures who emerged from the shadows of the Roman Empire, none became more infamous than the woman who transformed poison into an art, so feared that emperors themselves sought her services. Before we can understand the people who became ancient Rome's most terrifying serial killers, we first need to understand the world that allowed them to exist. Killers do not appear in isolation. They are shaped by the societies around them. In Rome, ambition was celebrated, power was everything, and death was an ordinary part of life. These conditions created an environment where repeated murder could sometimes remain hidden for years. Imagine waking before sunrise in the city of Rome during the 1st century AD. The streets are already alive. Bakers prepare fresh bread. Merchants arrange their stalls. Slaves hurry through narrow alleys carrying water, food, and expensive goods for wealthy households. Soldiers patrol major roads. Priests prepare morning rituals. Senators travel toward the Forum, where political arguments will soon begin. At first glance, Rome appears organized and prosperous. It is the heart of the greatest empire the ancient world has ever seen. But appearances can be deceiving. Behind elegant villas and magnificent public buildings, countless private dramas unfold every day. Families fight over inheritance. Political rivals secretly recruit supporters. Wealthy citizens fear that an emperor's changing mood could destroy everything they own. Servants overhear dangerous conversations. Neighbors spread rumors. Informants sell secrets to the highest bidder. Trust is a valuable commodity, and in many parts of Roman society, trust is becoming increasingly rare. Unlike modern governments, Rome has no professional police force dedicated to investigating every suspicious death. Local officials can respond to crimes, but murder investigations depend heavily on witnesses, family accusations, and social influence. Wealth often determines whether justice is pursued at all. If a poor laborer dies unexpectedly, few questions may be asked. If a wealthy senator dies, political factions immediately begin blaming one another. Even then, proving murder is incredibly difficult. Roman physicians possess impressive knowledge for their time, but they cannot detect invisible poisons inside the human body. Many deadly substances produce symptoms that resemble common illnesses. Severe stomach pain, fever, vomiting, weakness, paralysis, confusion, and sudden collapse can all result from either disease or poisoning. Without scientific testing, certainty is almost impossible. This uncertainty becomes a weapon. Those who understand poison know they can exploit the limitations of ancient medicine. Poison itself is hardly unusual in the Roman world. Nature provides countless dangerous substances. Certain mushrooms can kill within hours. Plants contain toxins capable of stopping the heart. Minerals such as arsenic occur naturally and can be processed into lethal powders. Snake venom, though difficult to administer effectively, fascinates those seeking unusual methods of murder. Knowledge of these substances spreads through herbalists, physicians, midwives, travelers, and professional poisoners. Some poisons act quickly. Others kill slowly. Some imitate natural diseases almost perfectly. The most skilled poisoners understand not only what to use, but also how much to use. Too little, and the victim survives. Too much, and suspicion immediately follows. The perfect poison is one that leaves everyone believing nature is responsible. Roman kitchens, therefore, become dangerous places. Every meal passes through many hands before reaching the dining table. Farmers grow the food. Merchants transport it. Servants prepare it. Cooks season it. Cupbearers pour wine. Slaves serve each guest. Any one of these people could become an unwilling accomplice or a willing murderer. This is why wealthy Romans often rely on trusted tasters. Before important individuals eat or drink, another person samples the food first. If the taster survives, the meal is assumed to be safe. But even this system has weaknesses. Certain poisons work slowly enough that a taster shows no immediate symptoms. Others can be placed only on specific portions of food. Some poisoners even understand how to exploit differences in serving order. Every protective measure creates another challenge to overcome. For the most determined killers, challenges simply encourage greater creativity. Family life presents another opportunity for repeated murder. Roman households are large and complex. Wealthy families may own dozens or even hundreds of slaves. Multiple generations often live under the authority of one powerful head of the family, known as the paterfamilias. His authority extends over nearly every aspect of domestic life. He controls property, he approves marriages, he influences inheritance, he determines the future of everyone beneath him. Such enormous authority creates equally enormous resentment. Children impatiently wait for inheritance. Relatives calculate future fortunes. Second wives compete with children from earlier marriages. Stepfamilies struggle for influence. Every death changes the balance of power. An aging father may represent not only a beloved parent, but also the final obstacle separating ambitious heirs from immense wealth. Human nature has not changed very much over 2,000 years. Greed, jealousy, revenge, and ambition remain powerful motivations. Rome simply provides more opportunities than most societies to act upon them. Politics makes matters even worse. Roman history is filled with conspiracies. Emperors rarely die peacefully. Generals become threats. Governors build personal armies. Senators fear accusations of treason. Friends become informers overnight. The line between political assassination and serial murder sometimes becomes difficult to recognize. If someone repeatedly eliminates rivals through poison, does political motivation make those deaths less terrifying? For the victims, the answer is surely no. The result is the same: another funeral, another grieving family, another fortune changing hands, another mystery left unsolved. Religion also shapes Roman attitudes toward murder. Most Romans believed that terrible crimes anger the gods. Murder is not merely an offense against another human being. It threatens the moral order of society itself. Yet, despite these beliefs, practical reality often proves different. Powerful individuals frequently escape punishment. The law does not always protect the weak. Money influences verdicts. Political connections silence witnesses. Fear discourages testimony. Justice, though respected in theory, is unevenly applied. This imbalance encourages dangerous people. A successful killer learns an important lesson after each undetected crime. If no one stops them once, why stop at all? Many modern criminologists observe that serial offenders often gain confidence after early success. Although we cannot interview Roman murderers, ancient accounts suggest similar patterns. Each successful poisoning increases confidence. Each unexplained death reduces fear. Each escape from suspicion encourages another attempt. Eventually, killing becomes almost routine. Rome also possesses another unique feature that assists hidden killers: its enormous size. By the 1st century AD, the city contains perhaps 1 million inhabitants, making it one of the largest cities in the ancient world. Crowded apartment buildings rise several stories high. Narrow streets overflow with traders, travelers, laborers, entertainers, beggars, slaves, and foreigners from every corner of the empire. In such a crowded environment, strangers attract little attention. Rumors spread quickly. Facts spread slowly. Someone can disappear among thousands. A body discovered in a poor neighborhood may never be properly identified. Violence becomes part of the city's background noise. Most citizens worry more about surviving another day than solving another person's mysterious death. This atmosphere favors predators. Not all killers are wealthy nobles. Some come from humble backgrounds. Some use intelligence rather than status. Others sell their deadly skills to clients willing to pay. Poison, unlike a sword, can become a profession. A skilled poisoner may never personally hate the victim. Money alone is enough. This commercialization of murder is one of the most disturbing aspects of Roman history. Death can be purchased. A wealthy client identifies the target. The poisoner prepares the mixture. A servant delivers the meal. The victim dies. Payment is collected. Everyone involved hopes the truth remains buried forever. Of course, not every accusation is true. Ancient Roman historians love dramatic stories. Some writers exaggerate events to entertain readers or damage political enemies. Emperors often rewrite history after taking power. Victorious factions portray defeated rivals as monsters. Women with influence are especially vulnerable to accusations of poisoning and manipulation. As historians, we must remain cautious. Evidence matters. Rumors alone are not proof. Yet even after separating exaggeration from established fact, enough evidence remains to reveal that professional poisoning was a genuine and terrifying reality in ancient Rome. One name appears again and again in those records. A woman whose understanding of deadly plants became legendary. A woman said to have trained others in the deadly craft. A woman trusted by emperors and feared by nobles. She did not command armies. She did not hold political office. She did not wear a crown. Yet her knowledge may have influenced the succession of emperors and altered the course of Roman history itself. To some, she was a healer. To others, she was a scientist. But to history, she became something far more chilling. she became the most infamous poisoner the Roman world had ever known. Her name was Locusta, and once her deadly talents attracted the attention of the imperial court, murder in ancient Rome would become more organized, more calculated, and more terrifying than ever before. The history of ancient Rome is filled with famous generals, brilliant politicians, and ruthless emperors. Their names appear in school books, museums, and documentaries across the world. Yet hidden among these towering figures is the story of a woman who never commanded a legion, never governed a province, and never officially held political power. Even so, historians have remembered her for nearly 2,000 years. Her name was Locusta. To later generations, her very name became almost synonymous with poison. Unlike many figures from the ancient world, Locusta remains surrounded by mystery. We do not know the exact year she was born. We do not know much about her family. Even her early life is largely hidden behind the fog of history. Ancient writers suggest she came from Gaul, a vast region corresponding roughly to modern-day France and neighboring territories. Whether this is completely accurate remains uncertain, but several Roman historians associate her with that region. What does seem more likely is that she possessed an extraordinary understanding of poisonous plants and natural toxins. This knowledge was rare, valuable, and incredibly dangerous. In the ancient world, the line between medicine and poison was often very thin. A small amount of a particular herb might relieve pain. A slightly larger amount might cause severe illness. An even greater dose could kill. The difference was often measured not by the substance itself, but by the quantity administered. This required remarkable precision. An inexperienced poisoner might kill too quickly, raising immediate suspicion. Another might fail entirely, allowing the victim to survive and identify the attacker. A true expert understood timing, symptoms, dosage, human behavior, and perhaps most importantly, how to make murder appear natural. At some point, Locusta's reputation became known in Rome. Exactly how she entered the city's criminal underworld is unknown. Perhaps wealthy clients sought her services. Perhaps she worked secretly through intermediaries. Perhaps her expertise spread through whispered recommendations among powerful families. However it happened, one fact became increasingly clear. People believed she could produce death on command. Ancient Rome was already a city where rumors traveled faster than truth. Stories about gifted poisoners spread from marketplace to palace. Some were undoubtedly exaggerated. Others contained uncomfortable amounts of truth. Eventually, Locusta attracted the attention of people far more powerful than ordinary citizens. She came to the notice of the imperial court itself. This was both the greatest opportunity and the greatest danger imaginable. Serving the emperor could bring wealth, protection, and influence. It could also lead to immediate execution if anything went wrong. The Roman emperor during this turbulent period was Claudius. By many accounts, Claudius was intelligent and hard-working, yet he ruled a court filled with rivalries, conspiracies, and ambitious relatives. Every decision created enemies. Every succession plan threatened someone else's future. Within that dangerous environment stood one of the most influential women in Roman history, Agrippina the Younger. She was ambitious, politically skilled, and determined to secure the throne for her own son, Nero. Standing between Nero and the imperial throne was Claudius himself. Ancient historians later claimed that poison became the chosen solution. Here we encounter one of the greatest historical debates surrounding ancient Rome. Did Agrippina truly arrange Claudius's murder? Many ancient writers believed so. Modern historians remain more cautious. The surviving evidence comes from authors writing years after the events, and some accounts clearly contain political bias. Nevertheless, several independent Roman historians describe remarkably similar stories. According to these accounts, Locusta was recruited to prepare a deadly poison. The objective was simple: remove the emperor, ensure Nero's succession, leave as little evidence as possible. If these accounts are accurate, Locusta had now crossed an extraordinary line. She was no longer merely an underground poisoner. She had become an instrument of imperial politics. The alleged assassination itself has entered history as one of Rome's most famous mysteries. Ancient writers describe Claudius eating poisoned mushrooms during a banquet. Mushrooms were considered a delicacy among wealthy Romans. Ironically, they were also naturally associated with accidental poisoning. A carefully prepared toxic mushroom dish could therefore provide an almost perfect disguise. Some historians even refer to mushrooms as the food of the gods. For Claudius, they may have become the food of death. Accounts differ regarding exactly what happened next. Some claim the poison worked immediately. Others suggest it failed to kill quickly enough. Still others describe additional poison being administered later through a feather supposedly used to induce vomiting. Whether every detail is accurate remains impossible to prove, but the result is beyond dispute. Claudius died. Nero became emperor, and Locusta's reputation grew dramatically. Most criminals would expect execution after participating in the death of an emperor. Locusta experienced something entirely different. Instead of punishment, she reportedly received protection. The new emperor recognized her value. According to ancient sources, Nero did not view her as a criminal. He viewed her as an asset. This decision would have terrifying consequences. Rather than disappearing into history after one famous poisoning, Locusta allegedly continued practicing her deadly profession under imperial patronage. In effect, one of history's most feared poisoners had found the most powerful employer imaginable. Nero reportedly rewarded her generously. Some accounts even suggest she received estates, wealth, and official protection. If true, this represented an astonishing reversal of fortune. A woman once associated with criminal poisoning had become someone whose skills benefited the emperor himself. The message was unmistakable. As long as her victims served imperial interests, she had little to fear. This environment encouraged further killings. Ancient historians increasingly associated Locusta with suspicious deaths involving members of the imperial family. One case stands above the others: the death of Britannicus. Britannicus was the biological son of Emperor Claudius. By birth, many Romans considered him the legitimate heir to the throne. Although Nero had already become emperor, Britannicus remained a potential rival. As long as he lived, some political factions might rally around him. To an insecure ruler, that possibility was dangerous. Ancient historians describe a banquet where Britannicus suddenly collapsed after drinking a cup prepared specifically for him. Guests reportedly watched in horror as the young prince struggled to breathe. Nero calmly dismissed the incident, claiming Britannicus suffered from epilepsy. The explanation convinced few observers. Many believed poison had struck again. Several ancient authors directly accused Locusta of preparing the fatal mixture. According to one famous version of the story, Nero was initially dissatisfied because her first poison acted too slowly. Furious, he demanded something faster and more reliable. Locusta allegedly experimented on animals, then on condemned prisoners. Only after perfecting the formula did she prepare the final poison used against Britannicus. Whether every detail occurred exactly as described remains uncertain. Roman historians often dramatized events, yet the consistency of these accusations across multiple sources has ensured that Locusta's reputation endured through the centuries. If even part of these accounts is true, they reveal something profoundly disturbing. Killing had become organized, methodical, almost scientific. Rather than relying on chance, poisons were allegedly tested, refined, and perfected. Victims became experiments. Death became a calculated process. This is one reason many historians regard Locusta as one of history's earliest documented professional serial poisoners. Her crimes, if accurately reported, were not crimes of sudden anger. They required planning, knowledge, patience, and emotional detachment. Each poisoning demanded careful preparation. The victim had to consume the poison without suspicion. Witnesses had to be managed. Symptoms had to appear believable. Escape plans had to exist before the crime even began. This was murder transformed into a craft. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of Locusta's story is that she reportedly became a teacher as well. Some ancient sources claim Nero ordered her to instruct others in the preparation of poisons. If true, her deadly knowledge did not end with her, it spread. Students learned techniques. Recipes survived. New poisoners emerged. One expert became many. Whether this account is completely accurate remains debated, but it illustrates how Romans themselves viewed Locusta. She was no ordinary criminal. She represented an entire profession, a master of hidden death. Yet even under imperial protection, no reign lasts forever. Power changes hands. Allies become enemies. New emperors erase the legacy of old ones. And when Nero's rule finally collapsed, those who had once served him found themselves facing a very different future. For Locusta, the years of protection were about to end. The empire that had rewarded her deadly talents would soon demand payment for every life she had taken. For several years, it seemed that Locusta had achieved something almost impossible. She had escaped the fate that awaited most killers. Instead of living in fear of arrest, she reportedly enjoyed the protection of the most powerful man in the Roman Empire. While ordinary criminals hid in the shadows, Locusta was said to have lived under the favor of Emperor Nero himself. As long as Nero remained on the throne, few people dared challenge a woman whose skills had allegedly helped shape the future of the empire. But in ancient Rome, power was never permanent. Every emperor ruled beneath an invisible shadow, the shadow of betrayal, the shadow of conspiracy, the shadow of violent death. History had already shown that an emperor could rise quickly and fall even faster. The same political system that elevated rulers could just as easily destroy them. Friends became enemies overnight. Loyal generals declared rebellion. Senators changed sides whenever survival demanded it. Nero believed he controlled Rome. In reality, Rome was slowly slipping beyond his control. As the years passed, dissatisfaction spread across the empire. Heavy taxation, political executions, and growing unrest weakened Nero's position. Some admired him for his artistic interests and ambitious building projects, but many others saw a ruler becoming increasingly isolated from reality. The emperor trusted fewer people. Suspicion became a constant companion. Every whisper sounded like a conspiracy. Every disagreement appeared to be treason. In such an atmosphere, more people died. Roman historians describe an imperial court consumed by fear. Nobles wondered whether they would survive another week. Senators hesitated before speaking openly. Even members of Nero's own household feared attracting unwanted attention. When rulers begin to fear everyone around them, violence often follows. Whether every execution was justified or not, Rome became a dangerous place for anyone considered politically inconvenient. For someone like Locusta, this environment was profitable. Every new rival represented another possible client. Every political crisis created another demand for silent murder. Poison remained one of the empire's most effective weapons because it left room for doubt. A sword announced guilt. Poison invited uncertainty. Was the victim murdered? Did illness strike naturally? Had age finally taken its toll? These unanswered questions protected those responsible. Ancient writers increasingly associated Locusta with this hidden world of calculated death. Some accounts suggest wealthy Romans quietly sought her assistance long after her most famous crimes. Others claimed her reputation alone inspired fear. A simple rumor that Locusta had become involved in someone's affairs was enough to make people nervous. Whether these stories were entirely true hardly mattered. Reputation itself became a weapon. Fear often kills confidence before poison ever reaches the cup. Yet history has a remarkable way of changing fortunes. In AD 68, Nero's reign began to collapse. Provincial governors rebelled. Military commanders withdrew their loyalty. The Senate turned against the emperor. One by one, the pillars supporting his rule crumbled. Finally, abandoned by almost everyone he trusted, Nero fled. Facing capture, he took his own life. With his death, an entire political system disappeared almost overnight. For Locusta, the consequences were immediate. The protection that had kept her safe vanished. Those who had once feared her no longer had reason to remain silent. A new emperor, Galba, entered Rome promising a different kind of government. One of his first priorities was removing many of Nero's closest supporters. This included people whose influence had depended entirely upon the previous regime. Locusta was among them. Ancient historians report that she was arrested soon after Nero's downfall. Unlike earlier occasions, there would be no imperial pardon. No powerful patron would intervene. No emperor would reward her services. The woman who had allegedly helped shape imperial succession now stood alone before Roman justice. Unfortunately, surviving historical sources provide only limited details regarding her trial. Roman historians rarely focused on legal procedures unless dramatic speeches or famous political figures were involved. Instead, they concentrated upon the outcome. According to several ancient accounts, Galba ordered Locusta's execution. Some writers claim she was publicly paraded through Rome before her death as a warning to others. Whether every detail is accurate remains uncertain. Ancient authors often enjoyed describing dramatic punishments. Nevertheless, the central conclusion appears consistent. Locusta's extraordinary career ended with execution. For many Romans, justice had finally arrived. Yet even her death raised difficult questions. How many people had she truly killed? 5, 10, 20 more? No surviving record can answer with certainty. Many victims may never have been identified. Others may have died from poisons historians never connected to her. Still, others may have been falsely attributed to her because her name had become synonymous with murder itself. Separating fact from legend is one of the greatest challenges facing modern historians. Ancient authors such as Tacitus, Suetonius, and Cassius Dio all discuss poison, imperial conspiracies, and suspicious deaths. However, each wrote from particular political perspectives. Some admired certain emperors. Others despised them. Some relied on official records. Others repeated stories circulating decades after the events. Their writings preserve invaluable information, but they also require careful interpretation. Even so, one conclusion remains remarkably consistent. The Romans themselves believed Locusta possessed exceptional expertise in poison. Whether every accusation was justified is another matter entirely. But reputation often reflects genuine ability. People rarely become legendary without some foundation in reality. Locusta's story also reveals something larger than one individual. She symbolizes an entire culture of political violence. Rome did not create poison. Every civilization has known toxic substances. What made Rome unique was the way poison became intertwined with imperial politics, successions, inheritance, court rivalries, family disputes, political ambition. All these struggles created opportunities for hidden murder. In many ways, Locusta became the perfect weapon for an age that preferred silent deaths over open civil war. She also demonstrates how knowledge itself can become dangerous The same understanding of plants capable of healing disease could also produce agonizing death. Ancient medicine and ancient poison shared the same roots. Intent determined whether knowledge saved lives or destroyed them. That moral dilemma remains relevant even today. Scientific discoveries are neither good nor evil by themselves. Their consequences depend upon those who use them. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of Locusta's legacy is that she was almost certainly not unique. History remembers her because she became connected to emperors. But how many other poisoners operated beyond the attention of Roman historians? How many wealthy households secretly employed experts whose names have been completely forgotten? How many unexplained deaths were quietly accepted as unfortunate illnesses? Those questions can never be answered. The evidence has vanished forever. Yet Rome's surviving records suggest that hidden murder was far more common than most people imagine. Locusta may have been the most famous. She was almost certainly not the only one. As terrifying as her story is, another pattern begins to emerge when we examine Rome more closely. Not every serial killer relied on poison. Some preferred something even more disturbing. They transformed family into hunting ground. Parents killed children. Children arranged the deaths of parents. Brothers eliminated brothers. Husbands and wives became enemies, sharing the same roof. Inside Rome's most powerful families, love, loyalty, and blood were often overshadowed by one irresistible force: the hunger for power. And nowhere was that hunger more terrifying than within the imperial household itself. If there was one place in ancient Rome where people should have felt the safest, it was inside their own home. The Roman household was more than a place to sleep. It was the center of family life, wealth, religion, and social identity. Every home had its own traditions, its own servants, its own daily routines, and its own private secrets. Behind closed doors, families celebrated births, arranged marriages, discussed politics, and planned their futures. But behind many of those same doors, fear also lived. For wealthy Romans, the greatest danger often did not come from strangers. It came from relatives. History repeatedly shows that some of Rome's most shocking murders happened within families. Brothers turned against brothers. Mothers were accused of killing sons. Sons were suspected of arranging the deaths of fathers. Husbands and wives became locked in deadly struggles over inheritance, political influence, and succession. The Roman Empire was built upon bloodlines. A family's future depended upon who inherited property, titles, and influence. An unexpected death could completely transform that future overnight. Imagine a wealthy senator with 3 children. If the eldest son dies unexpectedly, the younger brother suddenly becomes heir. If the father dies, enormous estates change ownership. If a wealthy widow dies without children, distant relatives may become incredibly rich. Every death changed someone's fortune. This simple reality created powerful temptations. Most Roman families never resorted to murder, but some did. And when they did, the crimes often remained hidden beneath the appearance of natural illness or unfortunate accidents. Roman historians frequently describe suspicious deaths that occurred just when someone stood to gain the most. Sometimes these accusations were probably exaggerated. Political enemies often spread rumors to destroy reputations, yet in other cases the pattern becomes difficult to ignore. Again and again, people closest to power seemed to die at remarkably convenient moments. No family better illustrates this dark reality than the Julio-Claudian dynasty, Rome's first imperial family. To the public, they represented stability and divine authority. Behind palace walls, they often lived in fear of one another. Every possible successor represented both hope and danger. An heir guaranteed the future of the dynasty, but that same heir could also become a rival. As emperors grew older, ambitious relatives sometimes became impatient. Waiting peacefully for power required enormous self-control. Not everyone possessed it. One of the most controversial figures of this era was Agrippina the Younger. She was intelligent, politically gifted, and determined to secure the throne for her son, Nero. Ancient historians portray her as a master strategist, willing to eliminate anyone standing in her way. Modern historians are more cautious. They recognize that many Roman writers viewed powerful women with suspicion and often exaggerated their influence. Even so, Agrippina's story remains one of the most fascinating in Roman history. Whether guilty of every accusation or not, she became associated with a remarkable number of suspicious deaths. Her marriage to Emperor Claudius placed her at the center of imperial politics. Her son Nero eventually inherited the throne. To later Roman writers, this sequence appeared far too convenient. They believed murder had cleared the path. Whether they were correct remains one of history's enduring mysteries. Ironically, the relationship between Agrippina and Nero eventually collapsed. The very son she had helped place upon the throne soon began viewing her as a threat. Power had changed him. Or perhaps it simply revealed who he had always been. As Nero matured, he grew increasingly resentful of his mother's influence. She had guided him during the early years of his reign. Many believe she expected to continue controlling imperial decisions. Nero wanted independence. Neither seemed willing to surrender authority. Their conflict became one of the most famous family feuds in Roman history. Ancient historians describe a series of increasingly desperate attempts to remove Agrippina. One legendary account claims Nero commissioned a specially designed boat that would collapse while she sailed upon the sea. The plan failed. Agrippina reportedly survived by swimming to safety. Whether this dramatic story happened exactly as described remains debated. Roman historians loved spectacular narratives, but they agree on one essential point. Agrippina did not die by accident. Eventually, soldiers entered her villa. She understood why they had come. According to tradition, she faced death with remarkable composure. One famous story claims that as the assassins approached, she pointed toward her womb and declared that it should receive the fatal blow because it had given birth to Nero. Whether those exact words were spoken, no one can know. Ancient authors often placed memorable speeches into historical narratives. Nevertheless, the image endured for centuries. A mother confronting the son she had helped make emperor. A son ordering the death of the woman who had secured his crown. The imperial family had become its own battlefield. This tragedy demonstrates one of the darkest realities of ancient Rome. Power could destroy even the closest human relationships. Love competed against ambition. Family loyalty competed against political survival. When those forces collided, murder sometimes became the chosen solution. Agrippina's death also reveals another important pattern. Not every serial killer personally committed every murder. Some simply gave orders. Roman emperors rarely used weapons themselves. Instead, trusted officers, servants, or hired assassins carried out their commands. The person issuing the order remained physically distant from the violence, yet morally, responsibility remained. This raises an important question. If someone repeatedly orders killings without personally delivering the fatal blow, should history view them differently from someone who commits each murder with their own hands? Modern legal systems generally answer no. Planning repeated murders is itself a grave crime. Ancient Rome often reached a similar conclusion. Another disturbing aspect of Roman family life involved children. Infant mortality was already extremely high because of disease and poor medical knowledge. When an infant died, few people automatically suspected murder. This tragic reality created opportunities for hidden crimes. Likewise, elderly relatives often died after long illnesses. If poison merely hastened an expected death, proving foul play became nearly impossible. Some killers exploited precisely this uncertainty. Rather than selecting young, healthy victims, they targeted those whose deaths would appear believable. The fewer questions people asked, the safer the murderer became. Roman inheritance law unintentionally encouraged such thinking. A single death could transfer enormous wealth, land, villas, gold, political influence, business interests, slaves. Everything might pass to the next heir. For someone consumed by greed, patience sometimes seemed less attractive than poison. Fortunately, most Romans rejected such choices. Ancient writers praised loyalty, family honor, and respect for ancestors. These ideals remained deeply important throughout Roman society. Yet history tends to remember exceptions rather than ordinary lives. One shocking murder receives more attention than 1,000 peaceful households. As a result, the darkest stories have survived. And among those stories, repeated family killings appear with unsettling frequency. Some historians even argue that the imperial palace itself became one of the most dangerous residences in the ancient world. Not because the enemies constantly attacked from outside, but because danger increasingly came from within. Meals became suspicious. Servants became informants. Relatives became rivals. Every celebration concealed hidden tensions. Every succession created new enemies. Every unexpected illness invited whispered accusations of poison. palace glittered with wealth, but beneath its polished marble floors lay fear. For the ordinary citizens of Rome, these stories became both entertainment and warning. Rumors about imperial murders spread through marketplaces, bathhouses, taverns, and temples. People debated who had truly poisoned whom. Each new death inspired fresh speculation. The truth became harder to separate from legend. Yet one lesson remained unmistakable. No amount of wealth or power guaranteed safety. In fact, the closer someone stood to the imperial throne, the greater the danger often became. As frightening as these family murders were, Rome concealed another category of killers whose methods were even more difficult to detect. They did not belong to the imperial family. They did not seek crowns. Instead, they quietly earned trust by presenting themselves as healers. People welcomed them into their homes during moments of illness. Families depended on their knowledge. Patients placed their lives in their hands. But not every healer intended to cure. Some understood that the same medicine capable of saving a life could also end one. And for those willing to cross that line, every patient became a potential victim. For most people in ancient Rome, becoming sick was frightening enough. There were no antibiotics, no modern hospitals, no advanced surgical techniques. Even illnesses that are easily treated today could become fatal within days. A simple wound might become infected. A fever could rapidly spread through an entire household. A stomach illness might claim the life of an otherwise healthy adult. When disease struck, families placed their hope in physicians. A Roman doctor was expected to understand herbs, diet, surgery, and the mysterious balance of the human body. Some physicians were exceptionally skilled for their time and genuinely saved countless lives. Others relied on traditions that modern medicine has long since abandoned. Regardless of their ability, physicians shared something incredibly valuable: trust. Patients revealed their weaknesses. Families followed their instructions. Servants prepared the medicines they prescribed. Few people questioned what those medicines contained. This created an unsettling possibility. If someone wished to kill without attracting attention, what better disguise could there be than the role of a healer? It is important to be careful here. There is no evidence that Roman physicians as a group were murderers. On the contrary, most dedicated their lives to helping others. Ancient medical writers worked tirelessly to understand disease despite the limited scientific knowledge available to them. Yet history records disturbing cases in which medical knowledge was allegedly used for exactly the opposite purpose. The difference between medicine and poison was often measured in drops. Many plants commonly used for healing contained powerful toxins. A carefully measured dose might ease pain. A slightly stronger dose could stop a heart. Only someone with experience understood where that invisible boundary existed. This was why poisoners often studied the same natural substances as physicians. Knowledge itself was neutral. Intent transformed it into either healing or murder. Roman society also relied heavily on herbal specialists, midwives, pharmacists, and household healers. Wealthy families frequently kept supplies of medicinal herbs inside their homes. Slaves responsible for preparing treatments became familiar with countless plants, roots, oils, and powders. Most used this knowledge responsibly, but a dishonest servant could quietly alter a mixture before it ever reached the patient. Imagine an elderly nobleman recovering from an illness. Each day his medicine arrives in the same cup. His family watches with hope. The physician assures everyone that recovery is possible. One morning, the mixture contains something extra. The patient weakens. His condition suddenly worsens. Within hours, he is dead. Was the illness responsible? Or did someone simply take advantage of the illness to hide a murder? Without chemical analysis, no one could answer with certainty. Ancient Roman historians occasionally describe exactly these kinds of suspicious deaths. Sometimes they openly accused poisoners. Other times they merely hinted that something was wrong. Words such as unexpected, convenient, or after taking medicine appear repeatedly throughout surviving texts. Even when no accusation followed, readers understood the implication. Poison was always a possibility. Another group whose position offered unique opportunities were household cooks. Roman banquets were elaborate affairs. Preparing a feast required enormous organization. Fresh meat, fish, vegetables, wine, fruit, sauces, spices imported from distant provinces. Dozens of servants moved constantly through kitchens before a single guest sat down. Only one person needed dishonest intentions. A pinch of powder, a few drops of liquid, a carefully chosen portion, that was enough. Because wealthy Romans understood this danger, important households often relied on trusted food tasters. Yet no safeguard was perfect. A determined poisoner adapted. Some toxins acted slowly enough to avoid immediate suspicion. Others affected only specific dishes. Still others could be applied after the taster had already sampled the food. Every defense inspired a new method of attack. Fear gradually became part of everyday elite life. Guests sometimes watched one another before taking the first bite. Hosts worried that accidental illness might be mistaken for attempted murder. Even genuine diseases could trigger rumors that poison had been used. This atmosphere benefited professional poisoners. If every unexplained illness inspired suspicion, genuine murders blended into a landscape already filled with uncertainty. One fascinating feature of Roman culture was its obsession with antidotes. Powerful rulers desperately searched for substances that could protect them from poisoning. Some consumed tiny amounts of suspected poisons over long periods, believing this would gradually build resistance. Whether this method actually worked remains doubtful in most cases, but the belief itself reveals how seriously poisoning was feared. The most famous advocate of this practice was Mithridates VI, the king of Pontus, whose reputation for experimenting with poisons became legendary long before the height of the Roman Empire. His name eventually gave rise to the term Mithridatism, the idea of developing tolerance to certain poisons through repeated exposure. Romans admired and feared this idea. If poison had become common enough to require daily protection, then hidden murder was clearly more than an occasional concern. Stories about antidotes spread across the empire. Some were genuine herbal remedies, others were little more than superstition. Wealthy citizens paid enormous sums for mixtures claiming to neutralize toxins. Traveling merchants sold miraculous cures. Healers promised secret formulas. Not surprisingly, many people were deceived. Fear creates profitable opportunities. It always has. Ancient Rome was no exception. Another unsettling reality involved slaves. Roman law treated enslaved people as property rather than citizens. Many served faithfully throughout their lives. Others lived under brutal conditions. Some undoubtedly developed deep resentment toward cruel masters. Because slaves prepared meals, cleaned homes, and cared for the sick, they possessed intimate access to daily life. Occasionally, ancient writers describe servants accused of poisoning their owners. Sometimes these accusations were probably true. Other times, innocent slaves became convenient scapegoats whenever a wealthy Roman died unexpectedly. Confessions obtained under torture further complicate the historical record. People in unbearable pain often admitted to crimes they had never committed. This makes certainty almost impossible. Historians must constantly ask which accusations deserve trust and which reflect fear, politics, or prejudice. The more one studies ancient Rome, the clearer one truth becomes. Murder was rarely simple. Every suspicious death existed within layers of rumor, personal interest, political rivalry, and incomplete evidence. Separating fact from fiction demands patience. Yet even after removing exaggeration, enough evidence remains to paint a chilling picture. Professional poisoners existed. Political murders occurred. Families sometimes eliminated one another. Hidden killings influenced the highest levels of government. These were not isolated incidents. They formed part of the darker reality of Roman life. Still, poison was only one path to repeated murder. Some killers preferred methods that relied less on chemistry and more on opportunity. The crowded streets of Rome after sunset offered endless possibilities. Narrow alleyways disappeared into darkness. Travelers walked home alone. Strangers came and went without attracting attention. The city never truly slept, but neither was it ever completely safe. Among the noise of taverns, marketplaces, gambling houses, and brothels, another kind of predator waited. These killers did not always seek political power. They hunted ordinary people. Their victims often had no connection to imperial conspiracies or family inheritance. Instead, they disappeared into the endless crowds of the greatest city in the ancient world. And in a place where thousands of unfamiliar faces passed each day, one more missing person could easily become just another forgotten name. As darkness settled over the city of Rome, the empire revealed a very different face. The grand temples that shone beneath the afternoon sun faded into long shadows. Government offices closed. Senators returned to their homes. Merchants packed away their goods. But the city itself never truly became quiet. Instead, another Rome awakened. Taverns filled with laughter and arguments. Gamblers crowded around wooden tables. Street musicians searched for coins. Prostitutes waited beneath flickering oil lamps. Drunken voices echoed through narrow alleyways. Somewhere in the distance, dogs barked. The smell of smoke, wine, sweat, and refuse drifted through the crowded streets. For ordinary Romans, the night was both exciting and dangerous. Unlike modern cities, ancient Rome had almost no street lighting. Only a few wealthy districts enjoyed regular illumination. Most neighborhoods became incredibly dark after sunset. The narrow streets between tall apartment buildings blocked what little moonlight reached the ground. A person walking alone often saw little more than vague shadows. That darkness gave criminals an enormous advantage. Robbers waited for wealthy travelers returning home after banquets. Violent gangs fought over neighborhoods. Escaped slaves searched desperately for food and shelter. Drunken disputes sometimes ended with knives. The city could become unpredictable within moments. Ancient Roman writers frequently warned respectable citizens to avoid unnecessary travel at night. The advice was simple. If you valued your life, remain indoors until morning. Yet not everyone had that luxury. Workers finished late. Servants carried messages across the city. Doctors answered emergencies. Travelers arrived after sunset. Business continued despite the risks. Among the countless ordinary people moving through Rome's streets were individuals with darker intentions. Unlike political poisoners, these killers often selected victims based upon opportunity rather than personal rivalry. The confusion of the city became their greatest ally. If someone disappeared in a district filled with strangers, who would notice? If a traveler never returned home, would anyone know where to begin searching? Rome's population may have approached 1 million people during its height. In such a vast city, anonymity became surprisingly easy. Crowds protected the innocent. They also protected predators. Unfortunately, ancient records rarely preserve the names of ordinary victims. Roman historians focused on emperors, senators, and military campaigns. The deaths of poor citizens seldom attracted detailed attention unless they became connected to a larger political event. As a result, countless violent crimes have vanished from history forever. This absence of evidence does not mean they never happened. Quite the opposite. It reminds us that history often preserves the stories of the powerful while forgetting everyone else. Archaeological discoveries provide another glimpse into Rome's darker side. Excavations have uncovered skeletons bearing signs of violent injuries. Some bodies show fractures caused by blunt force. Others display wounds made by sharp weapons. Many of these injuries probably resulted from accidents, warfare, or isolated crimes. Yet they also reveal something important. Violence formed part of everyday Roman life. A sudden death did not always shock society. People expected danger. That expectation sometimes allowed repeated offenders to remain unnoticed. Imagine someone who attacked travelers several times each month. Each victim appeared unrelated. Different neighborhoods, different backgrounds, different circumstances. Without centralized investigations or detailed criminal records, connecting those deaths would have been nearly impossible. Modern detectives compare fingerprints, DNA, surveillance footage, and electronic records. Ancient Romans possessed none of these tools. Every investigation began almost from nothing. Witness testimony became the primary source of evidence. But witnesses are imperfect. People forget details. Darkness hides faces. Fear silences voices. Rumors replace facts. A clever killer understood these weaknesses. Some criminals probably changed neighborhoods frequently. Others selected victims with few family connections. Travelers, merchants, foreigners, and the poor often received less attention after disappearing than wealthy Roman citizens. This unfortunate reality has repeated itself throughout history. Predators frequently target those least likely to be protected. Ancient Rome was no exception. Another factor complicated matters further. Many people carried weapons. Roman soldiers obviously did. But civilians also possessed knives for work, cooking, and personal protection. Finding someone stabbed did not immediately identify the murderer. Countless people owned similar blades. Without forensic science, investigators had little chance of tracing a weapon back to its owner. Consequently, many murders remained unsolved. Roman law recognized homicide as a serious offense. Punishments could be severe. Execution, exile, forced labor, confiscation of property. The exact sentence depended upon social status, circumstances, and political influence. Yet laws alone could not prevent crime. Enforcement remained inconsistent. Some neighborhoods received greater attention than others. Powerful citizens often escaped penalties that destroyed ordinary lives. Justice, while respected as an ideal, did not always reach everyone equally. This imbalance encouraged dangerous individuals. If early crimes went unpunished, confidence grew. A successful criminal learned valuable lessons after every offense. Avoid witnesses. Choose isolated locations. Strike quickly, disappear into the crowd. Each escape made the next crime easier. Modern criminologists describe this as a process of reinforcement. Ancient killers almost certainly experienced something similar, even if they never understood it in scientific terms. Confidence can become as dangerous as any weapon. Rome's entertainment also shaped attitudes toward violence. Gladiatorial contests attracted enormous crowds. Executions became public spectacles. Wild animals fought condemned prisoners inside massive arenas. Children grew up watching bloodshed presented as entertainment. This did not transform ordinary Romans into murderers. Most citizens clearly distinguished lawful spectacles from criminal violence. However, repeated exposure to public killing may have reduced the emotional shock associated with death itself. Violence became familiar, expected, part of the world around them. Some individuals undoubtedly interpreted this environment differently than others. For a person already lacking empathy, such a society offered countless examples of human life being treated as expendable. One of the greatest challenges facing historians is identifying individuals who might fit the modern idea of a serial killer. Ancient writers did not use that term. Instead, they described repeated murders, unexplained disappearances, or notorious criminals, without applying modern psychological concepts. As a result, some offenders remain hidden inside historical narratives that never explicitly recognize patterns we identify today. Occasionally, a brief comment buried within an ancient text hints at something far darker. A robber known for many killings. A gang leader responsible for repeated murders. A hired assassin who quietly eliminated victim after victim. These fragments remind us that history often preserves only pieces of much larger stories. The full truth disappeared with those who lived it. Perhaps the most unsettling realization is this. The terrifying serial killers remembered today are almost certainly only a tiny fraction of those who actually existed. Most left no written record. Most victims received no historian. Most investigations produced no surviving documents. Their crimes dissolved into the silence of time. Yet while ordinary murderers vanished into anonymity, others became infamous because they operated close to the center of power. Some were not content with killing one victim. They built networks. They accepted payment. They turned assassination into organized business. Instead of acting alone, they worked alongside informants, servants, corrupt officials, and ambitious patrons. Their profession was death. Their clients came from the highest levels of Roman society, and together they transformed murder into one of the empire's most profitable secret industries. By the middle of the 1st century AD, the Roman Empire had become more than a military superpower. It was also a vast network of wealth, trade, politics, and influence. Roads connected distant provinces. Ships crossed the Mediterranean every day. Messages traveled from one end of the empire to the other with remarkable speed for the ancient world. But those same networks that carried commerce also carried secrets. Hidden among merchants, officials, soldiers, and travelers were people willing to sell information. Others sold silence, and a few sold death. Ancient Rome did not have organized criminal syndicates in the modern sense, but it certainly possessed groups of individuals who worked together for illegal purposes. Corrupt officials accepted bribes, professional informers betrayed friends for money, hired assassins accepted dangerous assignments, poisoners quietly served wealthy clients who wished to eliminate inconvenient rivals. Very few of these people ever appeared in public. Their greatest strength was remaining invisible. A senator wishing to remove a political opponent rarely approached a killer directly. That would have been far too dangerous. Instead, trusted intermediaries carried messages. Payments passed through several hands. Instructions remained vague. Everyone involved knew only part of the plan. If something went wrong, responsibility became difficult to prove. This method protected powerful clients while exposing hired killers to the greatest risk. For the assassin, success meant wealth. Failure meant execution. Despite the danger, enough people accepted these risks that professional murder remained a recurring feature of Roman political life. Some specialized in poison, others preferred blades. Still others arranged accidents that appeared completely natural. A horse suddenly throwing its rider. A carriage wheel mysteriously breaking. A traveler disappearing during a journey. A slave confessing to a crime after severe torture. Sometimes these events were exactly what they appeared to be. Sometimes they were carefully planned. The challenge for historians is that certainty is rarely possible. The surviving evidence often consists of rumors recorded decades later. Yet when similar patterns appear again and again, they deserve careful attention. Roman politics rewarded success above almost everything else. Winning elections, securing military commands, and gaining imperial favor could transform an ordinary noble into one of the richest men in the empire. Failure could have equally dramatic consequences. Exile, confiscation of property, execution. For ambitious individuals, the stakes were enormous. Whenever the rewards become that great, some people inevitably choose illegal methods. Ancient writers repeatedly describe plots in which murder was considered simply another political tool. One rival removed another. An inheritance changed hands. A military command became available. A new alliance formed. Behind each event might lie months of careful planning. The actual killing often lasted only seconds. Another disturbing profession also flourished within Roman society: the informer. Known in Latin as the delator, the informer occupied a strange position. Officially, reporting crimes could benefit the state. In practice, some informers exploited the system for personal gain. False accusations became profitable. Political enemies were denounced. Confiscated property sometimes rewarded those responsible for exposing alleged conspiracies. Fear spread throughout elite society. People became cautious about every conversation. Who might be listening? Who might repeat a careless remark? Who might secretly be working for someone else? This atmosphere created ideal conditions for hidden violence. Victims often had no idea they had already been marked for death. A casual conversation, a political disagreement, a family dispute over inheritance. Any of these might begin a chain of events ending with a funeral. Money played a central role. Ancient Rome possessed extraordinary wealth. Luxury villas overlooked the sea. Private estates stretched across entire regions. Gold and silver flowed through imperial markets. Successful merchants accumulated fortunes that rivaled those of old aristocratic families. Where enormous wealth exists, greed is never far away. Some murders had little to do with hatred. The victim simply owned something another person wanted: land, jewelry, political influence, business contracts, a position at court. Death solved many problems for those willing to embrace it. Professional poisoners became especially valuable because they offered discretion. Unlike public assassinations, poisoning often delayed suspicion. Victims usually became ill before dying. Doctors examined symptoms, families prayed, servants prepared medicines. Life appeared to follow its normal course until the final breath. By then, the killer might already be far away. Even if rumors spread afterward, proving guilt remained extraordinarily difficult. One particularly unsettling aspect of Roman assassination was patience. Modern fiction often portrays killers acting impulsively. Historical reality was frequently the opposite. A professional assassin might spend weeks earning trust, learning routines, studying household servants, observing meal times, identifying weaknesses in security. The murder itself represented only the final step of a much longer process. This patience separated professionals from amateurs. It also increased their chances of escaping justice. Roman emperors understood these dangers all too well. Many surrounded themselves with trusted bodyguards. Food tasters sampled meals. Visitors underwent careful screening. Private chambers became heavily guarded. Yet no security system could eliminate betrayal from within. History repeatedly demonstrates that insiders posed the greatest threat. A trusted servant possessed far greater access than an armed stranger outside the palace gates. This truth terrified Roman rulers. It should surprise no one that many emperors became deeply suspicious as their reigns continued. Some suspicion was justified. Some was paranoia. Unfortunately, distinguishing between the two proved nearly impossible. Occasionally, an emperor executed someone who genuinely planned murder. At other times, innocent people died because fear overwhelmed reason. Violence produced more violence. Each conspiracy inspired harsher punishments. Those punishments created fresh resentment. Resentment encouraged new conspiracies. The cycle seemed endless. Meanwhile, ordinary Romans watched these events unfold through rumors. Markets buzzed with gossip. Bathhouses echoed with whispered conversations. Taverns debated the latest mysterious death. Every unexplained illness inspired speculation. Every unexpected inheritance raised questions. People wondered who might be next. They wondered whom they could trust. Some probably looked nervously at every unfamiliar cup placed before them. By now, one disturbing pattern has become impossible to ignore. Many of Rome's most terrifying killers never viewed themselves as monsters. They considered their actions necessary, a political solution, a family obligation, a business transaction, an act of loyalty. This ability to justify repeated murder may be one of the darkest characteristics shared by history's most dangerous individuals. Once killing becomes acceptable for one reason, finding another reason often becomes easier. Yet not every terrifying figure in ancient Rome lived inside palaces or political circles. Some emerged from places built for violence itself. Places where blood stained the sand almost every day. Places where survival depended upon defeating another human being. The massive arenas of the Roman world produced legends admired by millions. They also produced men who became so accustomed to killing that the boundary between the arena and ordinary life sometimes began to disappear. Their stories reveal another frightening chapter in Rome's long history of violence. No building better represented the power and spectacle of ancient Rome than the great amphitheaters. From the outside, they were magnificent structures of stone, carefully designed to hold tens of thousands of spectators. On festival days, crowds poured through their entrances from every corner of the city. Merchants sold food and wine. Children climbed onto their fathers' shoulders for a better view. Senators occupied the finest seats, while ordinary citizens filled the upper rows. Then the games began. The roar of the crowd echoed through the arena. Trumpets sounded. Massive gates opened. And another day of bloodshed unfolded before thousands of cheering spectators. To modern audiences, gladiators are often remembered as heroic warriors, fighting for freedom and honor. Popular films have turned many of them into legendary figures. The truth was far more complicated. Some gladiators were prisoners of war, others were convicted criminals. Many were enslaved. A few volunteered, hoping fame and prize money would change their lives. Regardless of how they entered the arena, they all lived in a world where death was an everyday companion. Every morning could be their last. Every opponent represented another chance to survive. Training schools were strict and disciplined. Gladiators learned swordsmanship, shield techniques, wrestling, endurance, and tactical thinking. Their instructors demanded absolute obedience. Contrary to popular belief, gladiators were valuable investments. Owners did not want them dying unnecessarily. A highly trained fighter required years of preparation and considerable expense. Even so, fatal contests remained a reality. Some matches ended with mercy. Others ended with death. Repeated exposure to violence inevitably shaped those who survived. Imagine spending years watching friends die beside you. Imagine standing in an arena while thousands of strangers shouted for blood. Imagine knowing that your own survival depended upon ending another person's life. Few experiences could leave someone unchanged. Yet it is important to avoid unfair assumptions. Most gladiators were not serial killers. They fought because circumstances forced them to fight. The arena followed its own brutal rules. Killing within those rules did not automatically mean someone would become violent outside them. History records many gladiators who later lived peacefully after gaining their freedom. Nevertheless, Roman writers occasionally mention individuals whose lives of violence extended beyond the arena. Some escaped captivity. Others became outlaws. A few joined criminal gangs operating throughout Italy. Their combat experience made them exceptionally dangerous. One sword strike delivered with professional precision could end a life before a victim understood what had happened. The most famous example of gladiators turning against Rome was the rebellion led by Spartacus. Although Spartacus himself should never be described as a serial killer, his story demonstrates how trained fighters could challenge the Roman state itself. Beginning in 73 BC, a small group of escaped gladiators grew into an enormous rebel army. For nearly 2 years, they defeated Roman forces repeatedly, spreading panic across the Italian peninsula. Thousands died during the conflict. Eventually, Rome crushed the rebellion. Surviving rebels faced horrific punishment. Thousands were crucified along the Appian Way, creating one of the most terrifying public displays in Roman history. The rebellion ended. But Rome never forgot how dangerous trained gladiators could become once they left the arena. Outside organized revolts, some former fighters reportedly hired themselves out as bodyguards, enforcers, or assassins. A wealthy politician needing intimidation might employ experienced combat veterans. Criminal organizations valued men who could fight without hesitation. Political factions occasionally relied upon armed supporters to settle disputes through violence rather than debate. Street clashes between rival groups became increasingly common during the final years of the Roman Republic. Election campaigns sometimes resembled miniature wars. Supporters armed themselves with clubs, knives, and swords. Crowds attacked opponents. Murders occurred in broad daylight. In such an atmosphere, experienced fighters became valuable assets. Violence no longer remained confined to the arena. It spilled into the streets. One notorious figure from this period was Titus Annius Milo. Although not a serial killer in the modern sense, Milo maintained heavily armed gangs that repeatedly fought political rivals. The most famous confrontation resulted in the death of his enemy, Publius Clodius Pulcher. The killing triggered riots throughout Rome. Buildings burned. Crowds demanded revenge. Political instability reached new heights. This episode illustrates how organized violence could rapidly spread beyond individual murders. Ancient Rome often blurred the line between political conflict and criminal bloodshed. Another unsettling reality involved veterans. Roman soldiers spent years campaigning across distant provinces. They witnessed sieges, executions, massacres, and battlefield horrors almost beyond imagination. Most returned home hoping for peaceful lives. Some struggled to adapt. Ancient writers occasionally describe former soldiers becoming mercenaries or bandits after leaving military service. Their discipline and combat skills made them formidable opponents. Again, historians must be cautious. The overwhelming majority of Roman veterans were not murderers. Many became farmers, craftsmen, merchants, and respected members of their communities. Yet the empire's constant warfare ensured that large numbers of highly trained fighters always existed. Whenever political instability increased, some inevitably found themselves drawn toward darker opportunities. The arenas also created another psychological effect. They transformed killing into public entertainment. Thousands applauded successful fighters. Victory brought fame. Defeat brought death. This culture did not create serial killers by itself, but it normalized violence in ways difficult for modern societies to imagine. Children watched executions. Families attended gladiatorial games together. Public celebrations often included displays of death. Human suffering became a familiar spectacle. Most Romans still recognized the difference between lawful entertainment and criminal murder. But repeated exposure inevitably influenced the society around them. Perhaps the greatest lesson from the gladiatorial world is this: violence can become ordinary? When people witness death often enough, its emotional impact begins to fade. That does not mean compassion disappears entirely. It means society adjusts to realities that would horrify outsiders. Ancient Rome lived with violence every day. Wars, executions, slave revolts, political assassinations, arena combats, street crime. Against such a background, identifying one hidden serial killer became far more difficult. Another unexplained death rarely seemed extraordinary. This environment allowed some predators to remain unnoticed for years. As our journey continues, we will leave the roaring amphitheaters behind and enter an even darker world. A world of secret religious rituals, forbidden ceremonies, nighttime gatherings hidden from public view. Most mystery cults were peaceful communities devoted to spiritual beliefs. But ancient Roman writers accused certain groups of practicing shocking crimes, including ritual killings and repeated murders. Were these accusations genuine? Or were they simply products of fear, misunderstanding, and political propaganda? The answer reveals just how difficult it can be to separate history from legend in the shadowed world of ancient Rome. One of the greatest challenges in studying the darkest crimes of ancient Rome is learning when to believe the ancient sources and when to question them. Roman historians loved dramatic stories, a mysterious death, a secret conspiracy, a hidden meeting in the middle of the night, a powerful woman accused of poisoning an emperor, a wealthy noble plotting against his own family. These stories fascinated Roman readers just as true crime fascinates millions of people today. But excitement often came at a price. Facts and rumors became mixed together. Political enemies exaggerated one another's crimes. Victorious rulers rewrote history to make defeated rivals appear evil. As a result, some of the most terrifying stories from ancient Rome must be approached with great caution. One example involves secret religious groups. The Roman Empire was home to hundreds of different religions and mystery cults. Most gathered peacefully for worship, shared meals, performed ceremonies, and honored their gods without harming anyone. Yet from time to time, rumors spread that certain groups were committing horrifying crimes behind closed doors. One of the best-known examples concerns the Bacchanalia, secret festivals dedicated to the god Bacchus, whom the Greeks knew as Dionysus. According to the Roman historian Livy, these gatherings eventually became centers of conspiracy, sexual misconduct, forgery, poisonings, and even murder. His description is dramatic. He claims that people who refused to join the group were sometimes killed. Others allegedly disappeared without explanation. Hidden ceremonies supposedly concealed terrible crimes from public view. If Livy's account is accepted literally, the Bacchanalia represented one of the most dangerous secret organizations in Roman history. But modern historians urge caution. Many scholars believe Livy exaggerated the threat. The Roman government already distrusted private organizations capable of gathering large numbers of people outside official control. Political fears may have influenced the official investigation. Religious minorities were easy targets. A frightened population often accepts extraordinary accusations without demanding extraordinary evidence. This pattern has appeared throughout history. Whenever society fears an unfamiliar group, rumors tend to become darker with every retelling. The Roman Senate eventually took extraordinary action. In 186 BC, officials launched a massive crackdown on the Bacchanalia. Thousands of suspected participants were investigated, Many were arrested, some were executed, others fled. The ceremonies themselves were placed under strict government control. Was this campaign justified? Or had innocent people suffered because fear overwhelmed reason? Historians continue debating that question today. Regardless of the answer, the episode teaches an important lesson. Not every terrifying story recorded in ancient texts represents established historical fact. Sometimes fear creates monsters where none existed. Other times, genuine criminals successfully hide behind ordinary institutions. Distinguishing between those possibilities is one of history's greatest challenges. This uncertainty appears repeatedly whenever mysterious deaths occur. Suppose a wealthy Roman dies after attending a private gathering. Was he poisoned? Did illness strike naturally? Did political enemies invent murder rumors afterward? Without physical evidence, certainty disappears. Ancient investigators faced the same problem. They relied upon witnesses, confessions, reputation, public opinion. Unfortunately, all four could be manipulated. Witnesses lied. Confessions were extracted under torture. Reputations were destroyed through gossip. Public opinion shifted with political winds. The truth often became buried beneath competing stories. Some individuals understood this remarkably well. A skilled killer did not simply avoid detection. They created confusion. They encouraged contradictory explanations. Perhaps the victim suffered from disease. Perhaps spoiled food caused the illness. Perhaps an enemy invented poisoning rumors for political advantage. The more uncertainty surrounded a death, the safer the murderer became. Ancient Rome also contained countless fortune-tellers, astrologers, magicians, herbalists, and wandering healers. Most offered harmless services. Some genuinely believed they possessed supernatural abilities. Others exploited desperate people willing to pay for hope. Roman authorities occasionally accused these figures of using poisons or magical rituals to harm others. Again, evidence varies considerably. Some accusations were probably justified. Others almost certainly reflected superstition rather than reality. To the average Roman citizen, however, the distinction mattered little. Fear itself shaped behavior. People avoided suspicious neighbors. Families whispered about mysterious illnesses. Parents warned children about strangers. Rumors spread faster than facts. Every unexplained death added another layer to Rome's growing culture of suspicion. Perhaps that is one reason poison became such a terrifying weapon. It attacked not only the body, but also trust itself. After enough suspicious deaths, every shared meal felt slightly dangerous. Every cup of wine invited hesitation. Every physician's medicine inspired quiet questions. Who prepared this? Who benefits if I die? Can anyone truly be trusted? Those are the kinds of questions that transform ordinary societies into fearful ones. Yet amidst all these rumors and mysteries, there were also killers whose crimes required no imagination. Their victims were real, their methods were documented, and their violence left undeniable consequences. Some served emperors, some served money, some served only themselves. As the Roman Empire expanded across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, it created new opportunities for ambitious criminals. Long trade routes, remote provinces, busy ports, endless streams of travelers. A murderer no longer needed to remain in one city. The empire itself became their hunting ground. And among the merchants, soldiers, pilgrims, and officials constantly moving along Rome's famous roads, some individuals discovered that distance could be the perfect way to hide a long series of deadly crimes. The Roman Empire was held together by something its enemies both admired and feared: its roads. Roman engineers built one of the greatest transportation networks the ancient world had ever seen. Straight roads crossed mountains, forests, deserts, and rivers. Stone bridges connected distant provinces. Military camps, trading towns, and coastal ports became linked by routes that allowed soldiers, merchants, and government officials to travel with remarkable speed. The famous saying that all roads lead to Rome was more than a popular expression. It reflected the reality of an empire connected by thousands of miles of carefully constructed highways. These roads carried wealth. They carried armies. They carried ideas. But they also carried danger. Every day, thousands of travelers moved from one province to another. Merchants transported expensive cargo. Government messengers carried confidential documents. Pilgrims visited sacred temples. Retired soldiers searched for new opportunities. Families relocated to distant cities. Most completed their journeys safely. Some never reached their destination. Outside the great cities, much of the empire remained wild. Dense forests covered large regions of Europe. Mountain passes offered perfect hiding places. Long stretches of road passed through isolated countryside where help might be hours away. For bandits, these locations were ideal. Ancient writers frequently complained about highway robbers. Groups of criminals sometimes watched roads for days before selecting a wealthy target. A merchant traveling with valuable goods represented an attractive opportunity. A lone traveler carrying money could disappear without attracting immediate attention. Many victims simply vanished. Their families often had no idea where the attack had occurred. This made investigations almost impossible. Unlike today, there were no telegraphs, telephones, or electronic records. News traveled only as fast as the people carrying it. If someone disappeared hundreds of miles from home, weeks might pass before relatives even realized something had gone wrong. By then, every useful clue had disappeared. For repeat killers, this offered enormous advantages. A criminal could attack in one province, move to another, and leave almost no trace connecting the crimes. Different governors handled different regions. Local officials rarely shared detailed criminal records. Patterns remained hidden. One murder seemed unrelated to the next. Modern investigators often solve serial killings by recognizing similarities between separate crimes. Ancient Rome possessed no system capable of making those connections across an empire, stretching thousands of miles. This raises a fascinating possibility. How many serial killers operated across Roman provinces without anyone realizing that multiple murders were connected? The honest answer is that no one knows. History preserves only fragments. A merchant found dead near one town, a traveler disappearing near another, a wealthy official poisoned in a distant province. Each incident might appear isolated. Together, they might reveal something far more disturbing. Unfortunately, the evidence has been lost forever. Sea travel presented its own dangers. The Mediterranean was the heart of Roman commerce. Hundreds of ships crossed its waters every season. Grain from Egypt fed the population of Rome. Wine arrived from Italy and Greece. Olive oil traveled from Spain. Luxury goods came from every corner of the empire. Yet storms were not the only threat. Pirates had plagued the Mediterranean for centuries. Although Rome greatly reduced piracy after the campaigns of Pompey the Great, it never disappeared entirely. Some pirate groups attacked ships for cargo. Others kidnapped wealthy passengers and demanded ransom. Those who resisted often died. Again, historians must distinguish between organized robbery and serial murder. Most pirates killed for profit rather than personal satisfaction. Nevertheless, repeated killings became part of their way of life. Victims were often selected simply because they happened to be aboard the wrong ship. To those who never returned home, the motive mattered little. Death remained the final outcome. Travel also exposed people to unfamiliar companions. Roman inns varied enormously in quality. Some offered comfortable accommodation. Others attracted gamblers, thieves, and fugitives. Travelers frequently shared meals with complete strangers. Conversations began easily. Friendships formed quickly. So did opportunities for deception. Imagine arriving at an inn after several exhausting days on the road. Another traveler seems friendly. He offers wine. He asks about your destination. He learns that you carry money for a business transaction. The next morning, no one can find you. Perhaps you left before dawn. Perhaps robbers attacked during the night. Or perhaps the smiling stranger sitting beside you had planned everything from the beginning. Ancient sources occasionally mention suspicious deaths in roadside inns, though details are often frustratingly brief. The stories remind us that isolation increases vulnerability. Far from family and familiar faces, travelers depended upon people they had only just met. Most strangers deserved that trust. A few did not. One of the empire's greatest strengths, its ability to move people quickly across enormous distances, also became one of its greatest weaknesses. Movement concealed patterns. Changing locations concealed identities. Fresh victims appeared wherever the roads continued. As the empire expanded, opportunities expanded with it. Not every terrifying killer sought political influence. Not every murderer lived inside imperial palaces. Some simply followed the roads, some followed the money, and some followed the next unsuspecting victim. By now, a clear picture is beginning to emerge. Ancient Rome was a civilization of extraordinary achievements. Its laws influenced future nations. Its architecture inspired generations. Its engineers transformed the ancient world. Yet beneath that greatness existed a darker reality. Power encouraged betrayal. Wealth encouraged greed. Limited forensic knowledge protected poisoners. Crowded cities concealed predators. Long roads separated victims from justice. The empire's greatest successes unintentionally created new opportunities for hidden killers. But perhaps the most frightening stories have yet to come, because some of Rome's deadliest murderers did not rely on strength. They did not command armies. They did not carry famous swords. Instead, they understood something even more dangerous: human trust. They smiled. They served meals. They prepared medicine. They offered friendship, and while their victims believed they were in safe hands, death was already waiting. Every journey through history eventually reaches a single question. What can we learn from the people who lived before us? When we began this story, ancient Rome appeared as the magnificent empire, remembered for its military victories, breathtaking architecture, remarkable engineering, and lasting influence on civilization. It was the home of emperors, senators, philosophers, soldiers, merchants, and millions of ordinary people trying to build peaceful lives. Yet hidden beneath that greatness was another history, a history written not in marble monuments, but in whispered rumors, not in glorious victories, but in silent deaths, not in triumphal processions, but in cups of poisoned wine, broken family loyalties, political conspiracies, and murders that were never fully solved. Throughout this documentary, we have explored the frightening world of ancient Rome's most terrifying serial killers and repeat murderers. Some, like Locusta, became infamous because ancient historians repeatedly connected them with poison and imperial politics. Whether every accusation against her was true will probably never be known with complete certainty. But there is little doubt that professional poisoning was a terrifying reality in the Roman world. And her name has survived for nearly 2,000 years because it embodied that fear. We also saw how ambition transformed families into battlefields, how inheritance created temptation, how political power encouraged betrayal, how physicians, servants, cooks, and trusted companions sometimes occupied positions that could be exploited by those with deadly intentions. Perhaps the most unsettling discovery was that many of these killers did not appear frightening. They wore respectable clothing. They attended banquets. They prayed in temples. They laughed with friends. They spoke politely. Nothing about their appearance warned others of the danger they carried. That truth has echoed throughout human history. The greatest threats are not always the loudest. Sometimes they are the quietest. Ancient Rome also reminds us of the limits of justice. Without modern forensic science, investigators faced enormous challenges. There was no DNA, no fingerprint analysis, no toxicology laboratories, no surveillance cameras, no digital records. Many suspicious deaths remained exactly that. Suspicious. Evidence disappeared quickly. Witnesses forgot details. Rumors replaced facts. Political influence shaped investigations. As a result, countless killers almost certainly escaped punishment. Their names have been lost forever. History remembers only a few. Behind every famous case may have been dozens of forgotten ones. This realization should make us appreciate the extraordinary advances of modern criminal investigation. Today, science can reveal truths that ancient investigators could scarcely imagine. Poisons leave chemical traces. DNA identifies suspects. Digital records reconstruct movements. Technology cannot eliminate crime, but it has transformed humanity's ability to uncover the truth. At the same time, Rome teaches another important lesson. Technology alone cannot protect a society. Many of the crimes we examined began not with weapons, but with human emotions. Greed, jealousy, ambition, fear, revenge, the desire for absolute power. Those emotions have changed very little over the past 2,000 years. Civilizations evolve. Human nature often does not. That is why the stories of ancient Rome continue to feel surprisingly modern. Political conspiracies still exist. Family disputes over wealth still occur. People still betray those closest to them. The methods may change. The motivations often remain the same. It is also important to remember that ancient Rome was far more than its darkest stories. The overwhelming majority of Romans were not murderers. They were farmers raising children, craftsmen building homes, teachers educating students, soldiers protecting borders, merchants trading across the empire, mothers and fathers hoping their families would survive another year. They celebrated festivals, they mourned loved ones, they dreamed about better futures. Like people everywhere, they wanted peace, far more often than violence. History naturally preserves extraordinary events. Ordinary kindness rarely appears in ancient records. 1,000 peaceful days may be forgotten. One shocking murder is remembered for centuries. That imbalance can distort our understanding of the past. Rome was not a civilization of killers. It was a civilization where killers, like everywhere else in history, occasionally emerged. Some exploited wealth. Some exploited politics. Some exploited trust itself. And those few left shadows long enough to reach our own time. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not how many people these killers murdered. It is how many stories have disappeared forever. How many unexplained deaths were quietly accepted as illness. How many travelers vanished along forgotten roads. How many families buried loved ones without ever learning the truth. How many poisoners escaped history completely. Those answers are buried beneath centuries of dust. Archaeologists may uncover new evidence. Historians may reinterpret ancient texts. But many mysteries will never be solved. The silence of history is sometimes its greatest secret. And perhaps that is why ancient Rome continues to fascinate us. It was a world of breathtaking achievement, standing beside unimaginable brutality. Magnificent temples rose above streets where criminals walked unnoticed. Great emperors ruled an empire while fearing those closest to them. Celebrations ended with suspicious deaths. Friendship concealed betrayal. Power invited murder. Trust became the rarest luxury of all. When we look at the ruins of Rome today, it is easy to admire the stone. It is much harder to imagine the people who once walked among those buildings. Some were heroes, some were victims, and a few became legends of terror, whose names still survive. After 2 millennia, their stories remind us that history is never simply about kings and battles. It is also about ordinary human choices, the decision to help or to harm, and to heal or to poison, to protect or to betray. Those choices shaped ancient Rome. They continue to shape the world today. Thank you for joining this journey into one of history's darkest chapters. The empire itself eventually fell. Its palaces crumbled. Its emperors disappeared. Its arenas became ruins. But the lessons hidden within its history remain as powerful now as they were 2,000 years ago, because civilizations may rise and fall. But the struggle between ambition and morality, justice and corruption, trust and betrayal, is one that every generation must face anew.